How's it going, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Infinite Sports. I hope you guys watched me and Ben break down the Knicks' huge win over the Celtics in Game 1 of the semifinals in the Eastern Conference. So we talked about the good. Now I am going to talk about the bad, and that is talking about the Yankees and their 4-3 loss last night in the opening game of the three-game set against the San Diego Padres. And yeah, this was another game that the Yankees blew late. This is now their fifth loss when leading in the eighth inning or later. Now they have 5 losses when leading in the eighth inning or later this season. That is the most in baseball. That's not good. That is not good. And you can also point to other games where they've had a lead and they end up losing it. Now, one of them has to do with Carlos Rodon, and that was the Giants game where he just let Jung-Hoo Lee beat him. But we're not going to talk about Carlos Rodon in a negative fashion today because he was fantastic yesterday. Another great performance by him. He has really come up big recently. And that's what the Yankees need out of him because of all the injuries with this team. He has to take on, a bigger role of importance. And lately, he's been money. Him and Max Fried have really been the top 2 guys in the rotation, which you kind of figured again with all the injuries. But he has really stepped it up, and he did not deserve a loss yesterday. Absolutely not. And this game did not start on time because of the weather. There was about a half-hour rain delay that delayed the game to about 7:30. And then there was another rain delay that was about a half hour. Both rain delays were about 28 minutes long. And I was surprised that Rodon did come out. I was a little surprised. Rodon came back out and pitched and did very well. And, the way the game was looking, you figured, you get to the bullpen, Yankees bullpen would lock it down, and the Yankees would get back on track. But that did not happen. The Yankees got a 2-run homer from Trent Grisham earlier in the game, and then Volpe tacked on another run with a sac fly later in the game. And we got to the 8th inning. And Devin Williams comes in, and he has been doing okay in his new role, but he was not good yesterday. He was the main reason why the Yankees lost yesterday. So he comes in the 8th inning, and first off, he starts off the inning. We go to the 8th inning. Starts off with the strikeout. Gets Martin Maldonado down on strikes. However, then he walks Tyler Wade. Okay, so now you walk the number 8 hitter. And then you give up a hit to the number 9 hitter. So now all of a sudden there are 2 guys on base. Then he strikes out Fernando Tatis. Tatis got thrown out of the game. And the manager of the Padres also got thrown out of the game as well. Mike Schulte, he got thrown out of the game. He threw his lineup card and his glasses and was going at it with the umpire. Adrian Johnson over balls and strikes so the one of the calls on Tatis was a low strike. That was a bad call. So yeah, they both got thrown out. Then after that all happened, then he walks Luis Ariz. Devin Williams walks him. And again, this is with 2 outs. So now they put in Luke Weaver. And all Luke Weaver has to do is just get 1 out. And the Yankees escape this. And you have Manny Machado and Xander Bogaerts coming up. And Luke Weaver throws a pitch right in Manny Machado's wheelhouse, doubles, that scores 2. And I'm sitting there going, oh no, they're going to, please do not blow this game. And my family is hearing me in the living room because I'm watching the game in the kitchen now, in my kitchen, and my mom's saying, what happened? And I'm like, well, it's 3-2 now, but they're still winning. And she goes, well, how come I see that they're losing now? I see 4-3 on my app. And I was like, oh, no. And then sure enough, next pitch, Xander Bogaerts to left field, 2-run score. And the Padres go up 4-3. And that's the first blemish on Luke Weaver's season because he hadn't given up anything up until that point. He had a 0 ERA. And you knew once that happened, the Yankees were not coming back. And they still didn't get out of the inning because then there was another walk, but then they finally got Oscar Gonzalez to ground out. And then bottom of the 8th, Judge flies out, Ben Rice strikes out, Paul Goldschmidt singles, Bellinger then flies out. In the 9th inning, The Padres go down in order. Tim Hill pitches a scoreless ninth inning. Robert Suarez comes in, strikes out Volpe, gets Austin Wells to fly out. Dominguez comes in for Peraza to pinch hit, and he strikes out, and that's how the Yankees lose the game. This is a candidate for worst loss of the year, really. I guess you could probably say the worst loss of the year is still that Rays game when they were up by so much, and they ended up losing that. But this is up there. And with Devin Williams, I think now it's at the point where he just cannot pitch in any kind of high leverage situation. You need to do what the Yankees did with Aroldis Chapman a couple of years ago, and you have him pitching games where they're up like 12-1, or like you're just losing and you have no chance of winning the game. That's when Devin Williams needs to pitch. He cannot pitch in these situations because his ERA started to come down with these scoreless performances that he was having now in his new role, but now his ERA is back up to over 10. And everybody is killing Aaron Boone because Fernando Cruz came in and only threw 2 pitches, and then he was taken out immediately. And Boone's response at the end of the game in this press conference, he said, well, he pitched a couple innings, a few days ago or whatever, so, they didn't want to, use him. But why do you have him come into the game at all? But it's not the first time that's happened where you have a reliever come in, he throws like 2 or 3 pitches, and then or he throws 1 pitch, and you take him out of the game. But that's what Aaron Boone decided to do. Boone has not looked good these last few games with some of the decisions that he's made. Between this and then also not pinch hitting Escara with the bases loaded and nobody out in the final game of the Rays series. And look, I try to defend Boone because it's not all his fault, but when you do things like that, see, there's a lot of things that are out of Aaron Boone's control. But it's things like that where he is in control and he makes the wrong decision. And I'm more so upset with him with not pinch hitting Escara in the last game. This, obviously, yeah, it didn't go the way we wanted it to because then, Devin Williams imploded. But, yeah, it has not been a good couple of games for Aaron Boone. And it's not been a good couple of games for the Yankees. And once again, yesterday, 0 for 4 with runners in scoring position. This team also does not score a lot of runs. They really have not been scoring a lot of runs. They're getting their runs off of the long ball, and that's it. Like I said, Trent Grisham hits a 2-run homer, you get a sac fly, that's it. That's all they do. This offense really has not been doing well. Judge didn't have any hits last night. He had a walk, and that continued his on-base streak. You're not going to get on him from not getting a hit for one game. Oh, now his batting average is down to .414. But you got these Twitter trolls now that I see that say, here comes Aaron Judge up in a big spot, and, he grounds out instead of hitting a game-tying homer. Should not be talking about him in a negative light at all. At all. Other guys got to step up. And you know what? I don't want to hear about the weather. Like Devin Williams at the end of the game is talking about the weather playing a role. You know what? The Padres are playing in the same conditions, and their pitching did just fine. Carlos Rodon, the starting pitcher for the Yankees, he did just fine in that weather. It's an excuse. You didn't make the right pitches. You walked the number 8 hitter. There is no reason why you should be walking Tyler Wade. No reason. You should be able to get him out, get out of the inning. But he didn't do that. Put Luke Weaver in a tough spot to come in, although he only had to get 1 out, and he gave up 2 hits to 2 guys that the Yankees know very well because they played for years in the AL East in Manny Machado and Xander Bogaerts. It's not a good night for the Yankees. Not a good night. And, some of my friends were at this game, working at the stadium, and they were more upset with this loss. They voiced their frustration in a different way than how I am. I'm ticked off about the loss. But I also did bring up the fact that, hey, you're working at the game. You were there for 12 hours, 2 rain delays, and this was a game that they had in the bag, and they blew it. And it's not the first time that the Yankees have done this. No. There has been a couple of other games that I could go back to where There was a couple rain delays or a long rain delay. Yankees were winning, and then they came back, and then the game comes back on, and they blow the game in the ninth inning. Although this happened in the eighth inning. Go back to 2016 against the Texas Rangers. They had a lead in the ninth inning. They blew that. And I remember that because I'm a big Vic DiBotetto fan, and one of his Yankee locker room videos was from that night, and that was probably his funniest Yankee locker room video of all time, in my opinion, after that loss. That's why I remember it so clearly. And then I'll give you the other example, and this was a game that I was at. It was against the Angels in 2021. In 2021, they were up 8-4 in the ninth inning, and there were a couple of rain delays throughout. And Shohei Ohtani pitched that game, and he got taken out in the first inning. Didn't even make it out of the first inning. There were a couple of rain delays. They came back, and Aroldis Chapman gave up a grand slam to Jared Walsh in the ninth inning. And actually, I was at this game, but we left as Chapman was coming into the game. So we were listening to the game on the radio. My uncle took me to the game. And Jared Walsh hit a grand slam, tied the game, and then they gave up more runs after that, and they lost that. Now, it wasn't as bad as... Now, what happened last night was not as bad as that, but still, this is... For some reason, when the Yankees have a lead and there's a rain delay, you got to hold your breath because they can end up blowing it. But that's what happened. That's what happened. The offense is not doing enough, but also you cannot be blowing these games. This is what happened last year. And the Yankees waited all the way up until the summer to say, all right, maybe we should take Clay Holmes out of the closer role. Now they finally showed some urgency. They take Devin Williams out of the closer role, but now he's starting to blow games an inning before the ninth inning, the eighth inning. So he cannot pitch in high leverage situations at all. You want to continue to show urgency? He cannot pitch in situations like that. He can't. I'm sorry. I know it's only May 6th, but he can't do it. He can't do it. And it's just, you go through these games. I mean, the grand slam they gave up against the Diamondbacks, when, again, what happened with the Giants with Jung-Hoo Lee hitting those 2 home runs off of Rodon. Again, I don't want to put any negative things on Rodon because he was great last night. But again, that was another game that they should have won. The Rays game, the Blue Jays game that Devin Williams imploded in. This is going to come back to bite the Yankees. This could make or break their season. If they're fighting for a playoff spot and they end up finishing 2 or 3 games out of a wild card spot, you're going to point back to all these games from the start of this season and say, if we would have just won those games, we'd be in the playoffs. Last year, if Clay Holmes doesn't blow all those games, the Yankees could have had home field advantage in the World Series, and maybe that would have made a difference. But maybe it wouldn't have. It's not good. And the Yankees have now dropped 3 straight. This now ties their season high in terms of a losing streak. I know, because I'm just waiting for this team to go on a winning streak, and they can't do it. They can't do it. They got problems right now. Now, hopefully, like last year they got off to a fast start. Maybe this is the opposite. They get off to a little bit of a slow start. They're scuffling, and then they figure it out. That's what I'm hoping. But I don't know. I don't know. And through it all, they are still in first place. So that's why, I'm ticked off, like you all are. Whoever's watching this, that's a Yankee fan. But they are still in first place. For now. Now, I don't know how much longer I'm going to be able to say that, because at some point, they won't be in first place. And then, you're going to see me react differently. You're not going to be seeing me say that anymore. But they are still in first place. And they just got to find a way to win games. And I sound like Aaron Boone, because, look, when they haven't played well, there's only so much Aaron Boone can say. But he really does annoy people with his press conferences, because he says things that people don't want to hear. And I understand. But, yeah, and they got to find a way to get a win tonight. It's going to be against a very good pitcher, an old friend in Michael King. Clark Schmidt gets a start tonight. Hopefully, he could put together a good outing because the Yankees need it. They need it. They got to find a way. You thought last night, Rodon was going to be the stopper, and that didn't happen. And it wasn't his fault. It was the bullpen's fault. And as great as the bullpen has been, they're culprits in these blown leads. Devin Williams and Mark Leiter Jr. is also at the forefront of that because he's the one that gave up this grand slam to Suarez. He came in and got the Yankees into a bit of trouble in the games over the weekend, in the game on Saturday. And it's unacceptable when you have a pitcher come in like Fernando Cruz. He only throws 2 pitches and then you don't use him. Like, again, why do you even pitch him at all? Now, I did want to bring this up. So the Yankees actually did make a move. They designated Carlos Carrasco for assignment, and they brought up De Los Santos. If you remember him, he pitched in... Well, they acquired him at the deadline last year, and he wasn't very good. But yeah, they DFA'd Carrasco. They bring him up. I mean, I don't know what's going to happen with Carrasco, if he's just going to end up going to the minors or he's just going to opt to free agency. But I think that's it with Carlos Carrasco with the Yankees. You're not going to see him again. And it's going to be interesting what ends up happening with Will Warren. How long the Yankees have him in the rotation. They got to do something. I know Cam Schlittler is a guy that, we hear a lot about. He pitched. I like what I saw from him in spring training. Maybe that's someone they potentially bring up. But they don't have a ton of pitching depth right now. Like, I know the bullpen has blown games this year, but again, it's the least of my worries. Right now, I'm worried about the back end of the rotation, and I'm worried about this lineup. Now again, the rotation, at least we have reinforcements on the way. Right? Like, Luis Gil is going to come back at some point. But with the lineup, like, I guess Jazz and Stanton. But I think really, like, guys got to start hitting. Like, Bellinger needs to get on a hot streak. Volpe needs to get it going. Wells needs to get it going again. And everyone is getting ticked off also with Boone and the Yankees because look at what they're doing with Jason Dominguez. Like, he's not playing. Now, it's not really because he's been playing poorly. Like, he's playing so bad that he's unplayable. No, it's because Trent Grisham is playing really well right now. And they don't want to take him out of the lineup. So now you got this logjam of Grisham, Judge, Dominguez, and Bellinger. And one of those guys has to sit. Well, obviously, Judge is not sitting. But unless, they really want to give him a day off. But it's between Bellinger, Grisham, and Dominguez. And, it's just, you worry that the Yankees are going to hurt his development. But, yeah, it's just, injuries are hurting this team right now. And it's just, there's guys that are just not producing. There's managerial decisions that you question. It's just, yeah, team, and there are fans on social media. And I kind of am, leaning that way at this point right now. The season kind of feels like a 2023 season. And I hope we don't see that. It's May 6th. They're still in first place. But, I mean, they're losing series to the Rays, the Orioles, the way the Orioles pitching has been. And this is a game against a very good team last night, the Padres. One of the best teams in the entire league. You have a 3-0 lead going into the 8th inning. And you blow it. You can't be doing this. You cannot be doing this. If the Yankees don't blow all these games late, they have one of the best records in baseball right now. So it would not surprise me if these losses come back to haunt them later on in the year. But yeah, just a wasted performance with Carlos Rodon. And, I don't like their chances tonight against Michael King. I really don't. The way this lineup is hitting. And now Goldschmidt, who, deserves a day off here or there. But, It's against a tough pitcher in King. You want to have your best guys out there, and they're not going to have Goldschmidt out there. Yankees got to find a way to win tonight, and hope that they go into tomorrow with Max Fried on the mound to give them a series win for the first time in a little bit. But yeah, Yankees lose 4-3 to the Padres. Let me know what you guys think. Make sure to check out also the Knicks recap video of last night against the Celtics if you didn't get a chance. Me and Ben covered that. And yeah, make sure to leave a like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. And we'll be back again tomorrow. We'll recap tonight's game. Hopefully the Yankees win. And then, I do want to cover the Giants and talk about their draft. We'll get into that at some point. But yeah, make sure to tune in or check out the Knicks Celtics recap video rather. And like I said, make sure to leave a comment, like, subscribe, and that's pretty much it. So as always, I'm Kenneth Gruenfelder signing off. Have a good one. I'll talk to you guys next time. Take care.